What's up, guys? It's Wednesday. This has already started happening.
Is that the cat that I paid for?
This is the
I legally own stock in your cat now.
You own stock in a cat. A lot of people own stock in this dumb idiot. Yesterday we dropped an honest trailer that posed the question when faced with the news of another live-action Avatar series. Why must we fly so close to the sun? And today we found out just how close to the sun we're flying because the original creators have walked from the live-action adaptation. They both released statements today. They have nothing to do with the show. We're going to get into it. We're going to break it all down, talk about the ins and outs and the ups and downs of that. Then we've got a little bit of John Wick news we're going to talk about. And then stick around for the end of the episode. And we're just going to do an AMA with the chat. Just have some fun answering y'all's questions. Like the good old fun days. We haven't done an AMA in a little while, so I'm excited about that. I'm Joe. I'm your host. That's Sarah. Billy. Eric Goldman. Hey, you guys.
Hello there.
Who's in the back there? Is that Young Han?
Oh, next to me?
Yeah.
That's Mr. Wick. He's here.
Oh, is that John?
He's here for the news later. Yes.
You thematically set up your set. I appreciate that.
I try.
I bet Billy doesn't have a John Wick Funko back there.
I don't. I'm not really into like IP merchandise at all. That's not really my thing.
Definitely not your thing.
He's very upset about the Avatar news.
Well, let's jump into the Avatar news. And of course, if you love Avatar like we do, over here at Screen Junkies and Fandom, hey, you're very sort of frustrated and surprised by this news. And also, you've probably signed up for the Fandom 5 Avatar The Last Airbender Trivia Edition that we're doing on Friday. There's a link in the description. If you know your Avatar, you should come play, and you can win up $650 and hang out with me and Billy. Hey, Billy. I show up and I talk and ask you questions, and Billy does all of the hard work. That's our dynamic.
Par for the course.
Yeah, par for the course. So let's get into this, you guys. Both of the original creators and story editors of Avatar: The Last Airbender have walked from the show. They both released statements this morning. Michael DiMartino, said that Netflix had committed with them to create their vision for the show. Unfortunately, he says, things did not go as we hoped. So Michael Dante DiMartino did sort of a much longer, sort of more, politically savvy Netflix statement. He said, who knows, Netflix's live action adaptation of Avatar has the potential to be good. It might turn out to be a show many of you end up enjoying. But what I can be certain about is that whatever version ends up on screen, it will not be what Brian and I had envisioned or intended to make. Writing this letter has left me with a very heavy heart. I know many of you would be disappointed and frustrated by this news. I get it. I also recognize this creative setback is small compared to the problems we're all facing as a society right now. Whereas Brian just posted on his Instagram, Michael and I recently chose to leave Netflix's live-action adaptation of Avatar: The Last Airbender, the series he and I created together in 2002. We will have no involvement in the project moving forward. So just a little sharper, a little twisty there from him. So Netflix hasn't commented on this yet, but I mean, the draw of this was that it was the redemption story after the Shyamalan live-action remake. So, I mean, how much does this suck for this series and for Netflix and for fans? And Eric, give me a 1 to 10 suck scale here.
It's a 10 on the suck scale, if the 10 being the worst, I guess, in this case. Brian's statement was interesting just because it went on to basically say that he felt that the project was a negative and unsupportive environment from the Netflix side. So he was way more sort of pointed, knives out on that. Yeah, it totally sucks because I think everyone hates the movie, but the saving grace with this is like, hey, this time the creators are involved. This time you actually have the people who made this thing there behind the scenes. They're going to make sure it's done right. And to have that yanked away is basically like sort of the worst case scenario as far as the optics of it all, to use that word, just because it takes away the thing that was supposed to make this one work.
Well, Billy, Avatar is not like a big fandom for you, but if this was something that you were kind of saddling up to be like, okay, maybe I'll check this version out, does the news that the people that created the show pieced out.
Yeah, look, I slogged through the movie, and sadly, that was kind of my first entry into that, and I was like, I don't like this at all. But since we did the honest trailer and we've kind of had the series available, I've watched a couple, especially with the trivia show coming up, and it's actually a pretty good show. Like I'm starting to get into it, but I think, you know, strip away the IP completely and just kind of look at the situation that you're in. If you have, you know, a reboot of an IP and it's like, this time we got the creators, we know you didn't like the old one, but this is our redemption story, as you said. And then they come out and one of them is pretty scathing with, it's like, they didn't want to work with us. They lied to us. Like the first statement is pretty, you know, someone read that and was like, yeah, put that one out. And the second one was like, you know, midnight Twitter, I've had a drink or two kind of a statement. But I definitely think that, like, barring one or two like major exceptions, anytime that there is like very loud vocal creator leaving a project, that project, whether the movie's good or not, or whether, you know, people like it or not, that project now is tainted. It puts the scarlet letter on it, and the audience perceives it now as kind of like a broken product. So you go to that movie or you go to that show, and instead of letting that show, like, you walk in kind of blank and like, all right, let's see what this is. You're walking in like, well, this must be terrible. So you're already on the defensive, you know?
I mean, you know, I'll be honest with you. I walked into Solo like that. You know, after all the news of Solo, I sat down with Solo and was like, let's see what this is all about.
I was going to say, maybe the only exception that I can think of is Edgar Wright left Ant-Man. But it still seems like most people were able to at least move past it and really liked Ant-Man.
Yeah,
but it's like, look at what Josh Trank did to Fantastic Four. You know, like, was Fantastic Four going to be a great movie no matter what? No. But when you come out the day before it comes out, or the day it comes out, just be like, I think it's trash, but what can you do? It's like, if I'm an exec at Netflix, especially if I have an Avatar adjacent series, Legend of Korra or whatever, the Korra series coming out soon, I'm pissed today. I'm really pissed, because now, whether it was boldly stated or at least implied, you're now saying like, Netflix doesn't know what to do with this IP because they're going to ruin this Avatar show. So good luck with the other one. You know, you've kind of tainted two products with that statement. Yeah. So if I'm Netflix, I'm going to be pissed. That's not me taking a stance for or against them leaving. That's just me saying, like, if I'm an executive, like, I read that, I'm like, dude, what are you, today? Really? You know?
Well, it'll be interesting to see how Netflix responds, because, again, you know, who knows? Sarat in chat brings up a really good point. These guys have been deep in this world for almost 20 years. Maybe they're burnt out or frustrated by anyone that would compromise something so close to their hearts. And I think that's a fair point. You know, it's obviously, we're not in the room. It's hard to gauge what Netflix won't play ball means. Right? You know, when this is your baby, and especially when you've been burned before, because they were burned by M. Night Shyamalan.
Totally.
In a big way. Like, M. Night was like, I'm not even going to pronounce characters' names correctly. Like, come on. You know, you probably are a little more, you know, on the defensive, and probably a lot less willing to compromise on a lot of changes and things like that. So I think it's an interesting situation, because it seems like, and again, I like you, Billy, I'm not coming into support or defense of anyone. I just think it's an interesting conversation to sort of talk about and break down, because it does seem like Netflix allows for some pretty big creative swings. You know, they gave the Dark Crystal team like huge creative freedom and a massive budget to really fulfill their vision for that show. It seems like The Witcher was able to make the adaptation that they wanted to make. So it is surprising. And, you know, obviously Netflix isn't like a monolith. There are different creative teams doing different things within the verticals at Netflix, but it does seem surprising that just like such a huge creative wall got hit.
Yeah, it was interesting to note that they only named Netflix, because, you know, keep in mind, Avatar, the franchise, the IP is not owned by Netflix, it's owned by Paramount, by Viacom CBS. who are partnering with Netflix on this live action series. So it seems like their issues were Netflix specific, at least what they said. It's just interesting because, this year Avatar hits Netflix and it's such a big deal. And I think it's like there's probably more of an audience for Avatar than there's ever been. It's more popular than ever. And like Billy mentioned, Korra is hitting this week. And so it's like a huge deal for Netflix that I'm thinking the whole time, well, this is great for them because this is all free advertising for a live action show they have in the works.
Yeah.
Be like, oh, look, we're getting all these people so excited. And now we have this live action show. Suddenly they're hit with this super negative blowback because the creators leave very publicly. They say like that they left on bad terms, basically. But then there's the cynical part of me that's like, because on one part of me, it's like, maybe this helps. Like, maybe they could mend fences because right now there's so much attention on it. But then the cynical part of me is like, does Netflix care? Because I'm going to say this. So many people are tweeting, I'm not going to watch it now. And there's the part of me go, are you really not going to watch it? You have Netflix. You're an Airbender fan. And there's a thing called hate watching. And when Netflix boasts their numbers, and you look at them, it's always like, people watch 30 seconds of an episode or all that stuff. So does Netflix really, Netflix might be able to call your bluff because they are sure you're going to check out this show. But I don't know. It's still, of course, no one wants such a negative thing out there, especially in the middle of what's a huge success. Like Airbender, I think, has been like Netflix's biggest show this year, or certainly one of them consistently. Mm-hmm. So it is bizarre timing that I guess he said that they left in June. So they basically left while the show was having this giant resurgence. So it is crazy to wonder what happened there.
Well, you made a really good point before we went on air. Guys, we talk about so much cool stuff before we go on air, but you made a really good point that with the resurgence was probably there was a lot of press coming up and a lot of interviews and this and that's and AMAs and, you can only, kind of BS so much, if you've got this news simmering. So, that's probably another reason for the statements.
I mean,
I think people are probably asking to talk to them right now because, hey, you're having a moment. Let's do some oral histories. Let's dive in. And they were putting it off, and now they're like, let's put this out there.
There's kind of like two ways to think about it. It's either super spiteful, the timing is very spiteful, or, and maybe, I don't know, maybe I'm just giving him maybe I'm projecting into it, but it seems like, especially that second one, where it's just like, I just wonder if that movie had never happened, if maybe they would be a little bit more willing to like, okay, let's just see if some of these ideas work. But it's like, no, we've been burned already. Like, I wonder if this is just purely like, guys, maybe we're never going to be able to work again now because we did this. But like, I got to sleep at night knowing that I had nothing to do with ruining this a second time, Right.
Yeah.
So maybe it just at this point, like you said, it's just like, I'd rather devote my time to something that's not going to just like really make my quality.
And that was kind of in the statement, right? They were like, what we can control is what we do put our time into.
Right. That's kind of a weird way. Like, again, like I said, if I'm an executive, I'm super pissed at the timing. If I'm them, like, it's kind of an integrity move to just be like, I don't want to do this again. Do what you got to do. Yeah. Like, it could have been way worse,
Yeah, I saw a friend of the show, Zach Stentz, tweeting about this and how, he was really surprised. And again, it's like, wanting to be in the room where it happens, to know what exactly went on, because he's like, look, I mean, hey, these guys, for instance, like, this is their first time doing a live action show, and there's going to be a learning curve there. But you'd still think like that Netflix would know we should work this out. So maybe we bring in someone to work with them or something. Who knows what the push and pull was? Mm-hmm. One day we'll probably find out more. But yeah, it is pretty interesting to see such a public implosion in what is kind of a victory lap year for Avatar, a victory lap years after the show ended, but just because it's having such a moment again.
Well, if I'm in marketing, I'm kind of worried today because I bet you a big part of that campaign was going to be like from the creators
of
Avatar. And now it's just like, what do you sell it on? Like,
well,
you go from the victory lap, like you said, to like immediately in defense mode. Like, I wouldn't be shocked if they rush out some footage within the next week or two
to be like,
see, it's really good. I don't know.
I don't think they've shot anything, right?
They haven't shot anything? They've got to put out something. I don't know if it's like, hell, leak a script.
Well, that's what I think. My big question is, if they walked in June, is have they hired their replacement? And they could hire like a big flashy, like, ooh, cool. Like if they get like a person who's an exciting genre creator as the new showrunner, obviously that would be a big move to help turn the tide here.
Or it's like, I remember...
Ryan, not a good idea, but I'll call it a big idea. Ryan says just put Shyamalan on it and just frame it as a redemption story.
I remember when I used to work for Pop TV, it's a Lionsgate subsidiary, and we used to, like, twice a year, we would have these major, like, every Lionsgate, like, all hands meetings. And this was like months before they even rolled cameras on Hunger Games, but they passed out a Hunger Games book to everyone that was there. And they showed a teaser, but it was just like an unnamed girl running through woods and like shooting an arrow. You couldn't see her face. It was like, clearly it was just like, I don't know, an exec's daughter just running through their backyard or something. But it's like, do something like that. Just like, I don't know. If I'm Netflix and I'm in marketing, I'm like, oh man, we gotta, like, again, like I said, like, that's just a tough job, because now you went from like showcasing we have the creators to now like you have to prove that this doesn't suck. You are now guilty until proven innocent with the show, you know?
Yeah. On the other hand, Vanessa in chat is saying, you know, they weren't just burned by the movie. Legend of Korra also got screwed over by Nick with the end of seasons 3 and 4 got put out online only, which probably wasn't a spiteful move. It was probably more like, hey, .com's the future.
And a ratings thing for sure, too.
Definitely a ratings thing. But my thought here is that, because I think you guys are right, I can't remember who said specifically they're aiming Venom at Netflix and not saying a thing about Viacom. Mm-hmm. I think this is where, because Viacom is clearly putting a lot of stock in animation right now, the Ren and Stimpy reboot, the Daria stuff, you know, they're really making a big animation push. I bet Viacom is in the corner right now just being like, we would never hurt you again.
Right. And let's do that third show. Because the first statement, he specifically went out of his way to say this doesn't mean we're done with Avatar and Korra. So it's like CBS All Access, third show, you know, animated show. I think, you know, that could still be in the cards, because in the long run, this is a more important piece of IP for Viacom than it is for Netflix, who don't own it.
That's so what I want anyway. Honestly, I want a different animated books.
And I think maybe this helps it. It was funny, I was on Twitter, I was arguing with some people who said, because of the resurgence, they're like, hey, I bet they greenlighted a third show soon. And I said, I don't think so, because those guys are busy with the live action show. Well, guess what? They're not busy with the live action show.
I wonder when that, maybe you know, Eric, when was this deal made? Because it seems strange to me now, especially in the era of Disney Plus and all these, that they wouldn't just think like, oh, we have this huge IP, let's put it on CBS All Access. Like, from
I have that right here if we need from
the deal for the live action show is a couple years old, but Paramount
2018.
Yeah, Paramount has partnered with Netflix a lot. Like, and even though now they're pivoting to CBS All Access being like, you know, platformed up and making it a bigger deal, there's already been this ongoing relationship between Paramount and by extension Viacom and Netflix. So I think this is like, this probably won't happen much in the future, but this was still kind of a piece. And they're not, the other big thing we should mention about Viacom CBS is they're not as precious about exclusivity. So Airbender and Korra can be on All Access and on Netflix, and Cheers, which they own, is on like 4 platforms right now. So they don't hold things as much. They put them on All Access, but they also make more money selling them to other people.
Well, yeah, I think, you know, my reaction when the live action news broke was, I think the U.S. has a weird thing about animation. It's subpar. It's lesser than. I think you could run 3-season books of this story in this world until the sun explodes and make a lot of money off of it and keep the IP healthy. People would keep coming back. People would keep watching. You'd build a huge fan base. I don't know. Our country's thing with animation is always so weird to me. I remember, again, you know, my old job back in the day was like keeping up with this theatrical release schedule for distribution over at Warner Brothers. And, you know, I'd be adjusting dates, and it was like, oh, and right now in Japan there are 40 animated features playing, you know, that people are having to try to compete with, and they're doing well, like they make money. And so I'm just always fascinated by our need to just be like, you know, what would make this cartoon better? Not being a dumb cartoon. It's just weird to me, that thought process.
Oh, and I should put on my corporate Hollywood glasses for a second and say that we should also remember that Viacom and CBS kind of re-merged just a few months ago, which kind of once more made it important to like, all right, it's time to make this CBS All Access thing a bigger deal and put all our stuff there. But I also noticed in a tweet just a couple weeks ago that Viacom CBS like put Avatar: The Last Airbender as like an image of one of their big IP in a way they never have. So it's like Netflix helped them see even more. They knew it was a big thing for them, but I think even more than ever, they're like, oh, this is like a really big deal for us. And yeah, we should do more.
Well, over under on the announcement of Avatar the first, or like Avatar the first Avatar or something like that.
Whatever
the first Firebender.
Tinfoil hat. Maybe this is all corporate espionage. Viacom pays these guys to be like, trash Netflix. Screw their Avatar show. Come make a better Avatar show for us, and no one will watch the other one.
It's
Who
the
knows,
streaming
man?
wars, man.
This sounds like a weird, like 1992 John Goodman comedy about the streaming wars, but
Yes.
Kellis here in chat said, hey, with all this going on, does this affect relationships with the Dragon Prince? It's another animated show that the creators work on for Netflix. I believe that one of the head writers of Avatar does Dragon Prince. His name escapes me.
Aaron, and I'm forgetting his last name, but yeah, it wasn't one of these two guys, but he was a big part of Airbender.
It's not them. The creators of Dragon Prince were a big part, but they weren't.
Oz.
Yeah.
Oz.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah. I think that's an entirely separate thing. Also, watch Dragon Prince. It's great. Yeah, boys. Any closing thoughts on all of this Avatar madness this morning?
It's a bummer. But I think it just shifted people to hate watch, and I think we've said it all as far as like it's just suddenly you have to like completely turn your whole marketing into get people back. So we'll see if they can do that. Yeah.
I think my final word is I'm just honestly surprised. I know that the gut reaction and the shoot from the hip, online as for anything is people just being like, oh, this sounds like Star Wars all over again. Oh, Netflix. But I don't think that's the evidence necessarily bears that out with Netflix creatively. This was just the wrong mix of people in the wrong room. I think. I don't know. It's weird.
You never know with those things. Look, sometimes complete devil's advocate. Sometimes there's some creators who need to be reined in a little bit. That's how we got The Spirit. We let Frank Miller just go crazy and make a Frank Miller movie. It's the weirdest, dumb movie I've ever seen in my life. So who knows? We don't know because we haven't read the scripts. We haven't seen anything about what they were going to make. So at this point, it's all hearsay. So I guess the final word is just like, unfortunately, this kind of feels like a lose-lose all around. They lost out on being able to do the show they wanted to do. Netflix loses out on, on the marketing and being able to say, like, we had the creators. And most importantly, like, the fans kind of lose out because now what should have been something that was celebrated and was fun is now tainted with this cloud of, like, is this going to suck? This just caused a bunch of problems. And so, it's kind of a crappy situation.
Not very Flameo at all. Hey, thanks for watching. We appreciate you guys for liking, subscribing, all that good stuff. Again, we're doing Friday. Link in the description below. We're doing an Avatar: The Last Airbender edition of the Fandom 5. Come on out. Check it out. RSVP in the link below. It's super fun. Try to get in there and compete. You win money for answering trivia questions about Avatar correctly. This show's been a blast to host. And also just getting to hang out with you guys and ask questions and win and lose and the ups and downs. It's been super fun. And also just, watching Billy panic in a little chat box next to me as we run the show together, as is our relationship. Make sure you guys come and check that out. Tomorrow, speaking of all things Avatar and Korra, or not tomorrow, Friday, Eric and Danielle will be dropping a review of Korra. Which I'm super excited to actually not watch yet because I haven't finished Korra. So I will be finishing Korra this weekend and then watching your review, Mr. Goldman.
Mm-hmm. I look forward to giving that review.
Hey, you guys want to talk a little John Wick?
Always.
Because we're getting a 4, and we're also getting a 5. This was via to her. This dropped a couple days ago. We just hadn't talked about it yet, but I'm always down to talk John Wick with whoever wants to talk about John Wick. Lionsgate unveiled plans for its Keanu Reeves starring franchise by confirming that a John Wick 5 is in the works. They also announced during an analyst call that the 4th and 5th installments would shoot back to back. My favorite source of news is always stockholder analyst calls, you guys. Said, we're also busy preparing scripts for the next 2 installments of our John Wick franchise, with John Wick 4 slated to hit theaters Memorial Day weekend 2022, if we make it that long. We hope to shoot both John Wick 4 and 5 back-to-back when Keanu becomes available early next year. So John Wick 4 had already been pushed back from May 2021, following the world shutting down because everything's a living nightmare. But is now pushed to 2022 with probably a 5th one on the way very, very quickly. Hey guys, you want some more John Wick in your life? I do.
I always welcome the Wick.
I was talking about this with Spencer the other day, and I pulled up a list of sequels that shot back to back. It's pretty 50-50 whether or not that's a good idea or not.
Including ones that Keanu was in.
That's true. Yeah. It's really 50-50, but you know what? I know a lot of people do. I don't go to John Wick for the lore. I just go for the cool stunts and the set pieces and the action. I couldn't honestly. I do like the John Wick movies a lot. If you plucked out a scene and we played Seen It and you're like, which one is this from? I'd be like, I don't know. They all kind of blend together in my head. So just give me more John Wick stunts and I'm happy.
I saw, I think it was Scott Mendelson from Forbes was tweeting about this, and he did speculate, and I wonder if there's something to it that right now the decision to say we're going to make 4 and 5 together, maybe it is a sort of COVID-connected decision, because we might see it right now. It's so tricky to make these shoots happen and all the safety protocols and everything, that if they're planning something like Lionsgate only has a few sort of core big franchises, then maybe they're like, okay, if we're making this happen, let's just make it all happen at once. Let's do this all now.
That honestly sounds really viable. With how complicated it seems like shooting films is going to be in the upcoming couple of years. Yeah, man.
That kind of falls in line with my pitch that I've had for a couple years, where it's have Tom Cruise take 3 years and all he does is film jackass crazy stunts, and then you figure out later what movies they go into. Don't worry about trying to shoot a bunch of Mission Impossibles or a bunch of Top Guns. Just go have him shoot a bunch of crazy shit and then figure it out way later once he can't do those anymore.
Well, because then, look, I think we're in a perfect situation in that case to just redo the legacy of Godfrey Ho, who was Godfrey Ho hired a bunch of actors to film one martial arts movie. He hired a bunch of B and C level actors from America, and then he just took their footage, bought a bunch of D-list martial arts films that had never seen the light of day from other countries, and then just spliced in the footage that he shot with them into these movies, and then marketed 10 movies starring those actors.
Oh, he Power Rangers did.
Yeah, he absolutely Power Rangers did. They're brilliant. And if that's where we're headed, then sign me up.
That's right. He did a Ninja Terminator.
Cobra versus Ninja. I believe there's one that's Ninja in the Valley of the Unicorn.
He gets Ninja into all his titles. Ninja Terminator was an episode of How Did This Get Made? So I that's how I learned about the lore of Godfrey Ho.
Oh, Godfrey Ho. We need more creators like him. I do agree with you. I don't need the lore of John Wick. I just need the action, but also there's something charming about the fact that they keep laying on extra heavy the thing that I actually don't need in the movies, to the point where I almost like it again. I'm in between these awesome fight scenes, explain the coins more, whatever.
I guess that's kind of where John Wick, not enough for me to jump off. It loses me a little bit, where it's just I don't need all the coins and the backstory and everything. I feel that first movie is so tight and so compact, and it's just so the elevator pitch is guy gets revenge on people who killed his dog. It's so simple, that the more it starts to get cluttered with lore, I kind of feel like that's where like a lot of horror franchises get bogged down with just like the Nightmare on Elm Street. Oh my God! By the end, it was like his mom was like a nun. It was crazy. Like just give me the core action. I want to see John Wick on a horse. I want to see him on a submarine. I want to see him on one of those bird scooters. I want to see it all.
I think I'm in the middle because the action is the selling point, right? The action is just so fun and so cool. I do enjoy how crazy the mythology has gotten, and the fact that because yes, the other version of this series is if they just did another John Wick adventure. Instead, they've done the opposite, right? It's been like 1 week in his life, these 3 movies so far. Yeah. One really crazy week in his life. And they keep adding to all this backstory, all this stuff, this, whole network of assassins. They're all around us. They're sort of controlling things. But I kind of do enjoy that. I enjoy that instead they've gone into this is like an alternate reality. This is like absolute, because the first movie is like the Continental's there. There's these little heightened parts, but it's the sequels that go all in on no, this is like completely insane.
Yeah, there's a man in the desert and you need to go talk to him.
Right. But there's something that, again, it's not the selling point, but I do enjoy it as kind of like it's a tightrope because they could easily fall too far into it and I think lose people, but they haven't done that yet. So I think if they can keep running that line.
People are definitely brushing up on the lore. After the news drop that they're doing 4 and 5 at the same time over on Fandom, all the lore pages spiked pretty hard. The High Table, the Elder, the Adjudicator, the Continental Hotel, traffic on all the people were catching back up on who's the Adjudicator? Which I need to also because I love those movies and I don't know who that is. Something that my favorite thing about the John Wick movies is all 3 have felt like different action movies without feeling like separate franchises. Does that make sense? They all have a pretty the first one, the gun fu was the big selling point, and everyone was like, "Oh my God, I've never seen anything like that." And instead of just doing that again for 2's very harsh and hard hitting. I compare the raid on the nightclub where he's just gun balleting, all over the place to his fight with Common where they're just throwing each other through windows.
Right.
And then the third one is these highly choreographed spectacles. I love that about the 3 movies is that's how I tell them apart, Billy, is just tone and choreographed brutality because the Halle Berry and the dogs sequence feels different than the sequences that are in 1 and 2, and so I'm excited to see how.
Sure, don't get me wrong. I like all of them. I think I like them to different degrees, but I'm also I think it just fits with my taste. I like The Terminator better than any other Terminator movie because it's just such a tight little
strip down.
Yeah. I like the strip down, just kind of the bare necessities of it all. So I like that first John Wick. The second one I think is my least favorite. I get a little bit lost in it. The third one, like you said, Joe, I'm now veering into Mission Impossible territory of just yeah, that's a cool story, but what crazy thing are you going to do?
Right, yeah. Has Tom jumped off of something yet?
Right, yeah. We're 20 minutes into this, and his life looks pretty safe. I don't like this.
that knife fight in the third one is, it makes me feel good.
Oh, when they just haven't, look, if I have so much love and respect, and I wish I could have been in the writer's room in the moment where on a dry erase board they had knife fight and then one of them drew an arrow and then next to that arrow wrote "in a knife museum?" ? Well,
did you see when we did our Hey Fandom with Chad Stahelski? He was sitting in a room. He's on the other side of this wall is a dry erase board, and we just have set pieces, just all sorts of set pieces, and it's just kind of a pin the tail on the donkey of what's going to end up in a John Wick movie.
Yeah. If nothing else, because that's a great stunt team even before John Wick, the work they do is really cool. And if nothing else, if John Wick has given them the finances they need to just make their crazy action dreams come true, I'm all for it. Hey, let's. We got a few minutes left. You guys want to just close out with some AMA with the chat? We haven't really done anything like this.
Let's do it
in a little bit. Let's see here. Let's start off with Matthew McGuire asked, why do you think we haven't seen a reboot of Max Headroom or Quantum Leap or other sidebar 80s and 90s sci-fi? Sub question: what would you pick if you could reboot one?
Quantum Leap is actually one that I'm a little surprised hasn't.
Yeah.
It's coming at a certain time. Max Headroom to me seems so of its time that I don't know if you could maybe make it something like you could reboot it, but I feel like it would just be so distanced from what it was that why even bother calling it that? But that isn't stuff Hollywood before.
Yeah.
But Quantum Leap definitely is one that's like that's got to be a Netflix original in like 2 years, right?
I say a Peacock original because Universal owns it, but that's why I also think it'll happen. Like it's just like a familiar title with an easy pitch. A major studio owns it. Mm-hmm. So I feel like Quantum Leap is around the corner. I agree with you. Max Headroom is a trickier one because it's retro future and as we've seen with Tron, it's like one of those things where it's like there's people like the idea of it, but do they really want to go see it as much as they talk about it? By the way, just as a side, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., which has had a really fun final season with a lot of time travel, did like a big Max Headroom reference. But it's like, Max Headroom hasn't really come back. I feel like you'd have to have like a really good pitch on that, something that could really make that work.
I think the reason with a lot of this stuff is there's a challenge. I think there's a real challenge to nostalgia, and I think it'll take some time for the studios to completely sort of catch up on this idea, but obviously some of it runs away and is a big hit. I think it depends on your take. 21 Jump Street did really well because there was a very specific tone and a take for that reboot. But then you have, the MacGyver show that they redid. I've never seen an episode of. I don't think it did hugely well. On the other hand,
it does well for CBS in that, like, an older audience just sort of sitting and moving on quickly way,
Yeah.
49 to 6 feet under demographic.
Right. Yeah. I think the Hawaii Five-0 show has done well.
That one went. Is it still on?
No, it ended this year. But
I was going to say that one's been on forever.
I think you have to put aside the CBS ones only because CBS they're like the last ones standing as far as still like we get a lot of viewers that completely never talk about these shows online because they are an older audience. So it's just a strange other world they have because they also have Magnum.
Did you guys mention MacGyver? Because chat is saying MacGyver is still going for what?
Yeah, no, and MacGyver and Magnum are still going.
Huh? Yeah, I just think I don't know. It's a hard sell sometimes. Because even 21 Jump Street on it, if they had just redone 21 Jump Street, I don't think it would have been successful. It was the fact that, it had that sense of humor and that, that meta sort of self-awareness. But then if you're just like, what if we did Quantum Leap but winked like 21 Jump Street did? People are now just going to go, well, you're just doing a 21 Jump Street remake. And
I kind of feel like a property that suffered, not necessarily 80s, but early 90s, was Baywatch. I feel like they tried to ride the line of both the 21 Jump Street, but also like, let's maybe try to do like a legit kind of comedy story out of this. And it didn't work on either front. It didn't work as a parody. It didn't work as its own thing. Like it just didn't work. And I kind of feel like not everything is rebootable. Some things, like in my opinion, Max Headroom, are just of its time, and that's what it is.
What Osrin Rim asks, what was a film you came in with negative expectations, but then it turned out to be good? This is a tough one. I'm
gonna bring one up just because it's 20th anniversary, and I was just talking about this, but the first X-Men movie, which had like, a lot of like, the pretty negative buzz and whatnot. And I think people had really low expectations. And then, it came out of it being like, oh, wow. Like, and I know people like at this point, of course, like superhero movies have evolved so much and there's things you can tear apart about that movie and who made it. But I do think that movie, when I went into it, I was so like, it's going to be terrible as like a comic book fan, and then came out being like, no, I really like that. Like, it was because they took it so seriously, because they didn't make it campy. I think I was just so happy.
Go ahead, Joe.
This isn't an act. The one thing that sticks out into my mind, and it's not because I thought it was going to be bad, because I was too young to have to even think critically about movies really or care. But for some reason, my parents were like, we're going to go see Braveheart. And I think as a kid, I was just like, I'm just going to be an asshole about this. And was like, I don't want to go see it. It's going to be stupid. And was just threw a damn fit about going to see Braveheart for some reason, and then sat through the movie theater like, there's blood and swords. And I remember my dad kind of being like, yeah, we kind of thought you'd be psyched to go, that your parents were letting you see the violent war movie. I don't know what the hell your problem is. But yeah.
Yeah, a recent one that pops in my head is the Aladdin remake, which I went in and I was like, screw this movie.
Good answer.
And then I actually really, I think it's one of the better live action ones. But Joe, like you, the like just dumb kid, when I was very little, 95, I didn't want to see any movie that summer except Batman Forever. And my parents were like, let's go see Apollo 13. And I had only seen the poster for it, like the movie poster. It's, you know, Tom Hanks looking very concerned with his space helmet. And I thought it was a horror movie. And I like vehemently protested. I was like, this is inappropriate. I'm very scared. I do not want to see this movie. This like aliens kill them in space. No, like I'm not doing it. And then I went and they like dragged me to it. And it's now my all-time favorite movie. Like, and I got very interested in like the actual space race and everything. So that was probably like the biggest 180 ever.
I don't know if I could say I went in negative. I just went in like worried. And also, I know a lot of people don't like this movie, but I really like the 2015 Vacation, and I'm like a huge fan of the original. And so I just went in being like, oh, I hope I like this. And I ended up really liking it and really thinking it's funny. And that's one of my more divisive Twitter. Sometimes I'll argue on Twitter with people, and I'll find some people who agree with me.
I think Chris Hemsworth is really funny in that one, right?
Which, I'm sorry, say again?
Chris Hemsworth is like, I think I liked it. I don't remember. I certainly didn't hate it enough that I'm like, nope. I think it was fine. Yeah.
E352 has to take us back to Airbender for a moment, Eric. Bill, you can breathe. You can take a breather. If you could only preserve one element from the original Avatar show, no matter what else Netflix changes, what would it be? I think my answer would have to be the dynamic of Ozai's family. And I'm just going to umbrella a whole bunch of things that I wouldn't want changed or touched within that big idea. I think Ozai and Azula and Zuko and Iroh are such a perfectly written dynamic in that show. And, you know, we mentioned it in the Honest trailer, but Zuko and Iroh really carry the weight of the series, the thematic weight, redemption, nonviolence, what does honor actually mean to you, all of that. Aang sort of goes on the fetch quest to learn bending and, all that stuff. And also, no shade, I'm obsessed with the show. I love every episode of it. But Zuko is the one that really goes through the thematic changes. And I think they're only amplified by his uncle, by the fact that Azula, like, literally isn't capable of having compassion or empathy or going through those changes. It makes her such a tragic, psychotic, scary young woman. And then just Mark Hamill's Ozai as just this overarching villain who took all the wrong lessons from his dad's lessons, which were already wrong. His dad, I think the original Fire Lord that started the war was honestly like, I want to share the Fire Nation with the world. Let's spread some Fire Nation democracy. And I think he honestly had like good intentions, and then Ozai twisted those already very stupid expectations or intentions and was like, no, I just want to burn everything down. So I think the dynamics of that family, if you shift those at all, the show falls apart and becomes very empty.
So I don't want to copy you, so I won't. I was going to say Zuko, but you covered it. I mean, because he is, like, dramatically speaking, his arc is the most interesting arc on the show.
To be fair to you, I used one thing to talk about 15 things.
But I won't talk about any of those things, even though I agree with everything you just said. But if I'm going to pick a different one, which I will, I would just say the portrayal of Toph as a character. I just love her. I just thought she was like, there's something so specific about her energy and her attitude. It could be very easy to get it wrong, but I think the animated series gets it right so much. I don't think she was even in the movie, right? Because I don't think they introduced
No,
her.
because the movie was just some of book one.
Right. So we haven't seen her ruined yet, and I would love to never see her ruined. So Toph is still pure.
Wait, she does appear in season 4 of Korra as well, I believe.
Yeah, she's in Korra as well. We're talking, but she wasn't in the
Gotcha.
and I think she's great in that. But yeah, she wasn't in the live action movie. So I've been liked everything about Toph. Man, Joe, your cat looks ready to jump forward. So anything about her, I just want them to get that character right. I want them to kind of get the right in live action, get the right young actress for the role, and hope that she can seem like Toph come to life.
Well, and then finally, Adam asks, does it show confidence that the writer of the Batman reboot says that COVID won't affect the story?
Confidence.
I don't know what he means. That's a weird statement to make. Why would it affect the story? Like, they'd have to rewrite things in order to, like...
I guess maybe if nothing else, if, sometimes... I guess maybe sometimes... having some forced upon downtime, creatives or executives like to take a fourth and fifth look at stuff and go, well, we got a couple weeks, maybe we do a little more tinkering. And if the fact is that the Batman script is solid enough that they've resisted those temptations, what do you think?
I do wonder. I mean, I guess this is total speculation and going for this movie, I do think, I would like to see something a little more scaled down, maybe. The last time we got, obviously the last live action Batman was Affleck, but the last sort of solo Batman movies were Nolan's, which by the end were these sort of the city taken over, this scaled up. And I kind of like the idea of, I'm going to use this term stripped down again on this SJU. But also, of course, in the time of COVID, when people have said they have had to rewrite stuff and something says maybe we don't have 1,000 extras in this sequence, but I'm also cool with a Batman that's more a smaller story in the shadows. I really hope they mentioned that they would hopefully be finally leaning into the detective side of things there, and all of which you would be fine in a COVID era or much easier to pull off in the you can't have as many people on set era.
Billy, are you pumped about this one?
I am. I like the Batmobile and the suit. I think they're all cool. I think they look great. I actually love, I'll use Eric's term, the stripped down look of the Batmobile, because they were starting to get is that even a car? Are there wheels on these things? They're starting to get a little out of control.
It's a tank on a car on a bike.
Yeah, the hat on the Hatmobile.
Guys, to give some context for what Adam was talking about, the movie scrapped some filming locations and is filming a lot of it in the studio with that Mandalorian VR.
I mean, sure. And I think, look, honestly, I don't know if it was just me. I think it was a lot of people. But until they released, I think it was a behind the scenes 2-minute clip of what that thing was, I had no idea that Mandalorian was pretty much shot on the high-tech rear projection. There's, in my mind, we don't need to green screen out backgrounds anymore. It looks great. Use that. It helps the actors. It certainly looks great on camera to have it in camera. So yeah, I see that as an all-around win. I think this movie is going to be the DC movies, if anything, whether they're terrible or great, they're always interesting. So, it's always something different. I love the Marvel movies, but you know what you're going to get when you go to a Marvel movie. I almost never know what I'm going to get when I go to a DC movie. So it's just a little bit more fun, I guess, in a weird way. I'm either going to get Joker or Aquaman, which are just both ends of the spectrum. So let's see what they do.
Some blind date jitters when you're going to see a DC movie.
Oh man, DC is the OK Cupid of superhero movies. I love it. I love it.
I want that as a pull quote. Can I get that?
I say that lovingly too. I grew up DC. There's nothing more that I want than DC to succeed, and that's why all this news about the comics is just bombing me out hardcore. But maybe the Batman can take my mind off it.
Yeah, hopefully. That we didn't really get into it today, but massive layoffs over at DC Comics, and so I think a good way to close out today is tons of love to all of the creators over at DC that lost their jobs, and obviously all layoffs are rough, but man, that's you fight so hard to get a dream job as an editor for Batman or Green Arrow or something like that, and just to have that snatched is sucks. Just is absolutely brutal. I think we'll probably have more to say in the coming months with the state of the comic book industry, and if de-investing in the creators that are now making you billions on the movie side is smart. Spoiler alert: our answer is probably that it's not. But I think we'll start getting into that more and more here on SJU. Thank you guys for hanging out with me a little bit. And thank you guys for watching. Make sure you RSVP for Avatar Trivia, and we will see you tomorrow on SJU. Bye, guys.